What is going on, everybody? Welcome back into the Celtics Talk Weekly podcast. I'm your host, Robbie Haytayan. Join with me is my co-host, Justin Lowe. Justin, we got an episode for the listeners or viewers today because last night at around 11:30 at night, we had some breaking news. And we had a script actually. It's actually pretty funny. We had a script fully written out, and we Justin and I every once a week hop on a call and we write out the script together. And Justin sends me a text. He goes, "Well, you should probably scratch that." And I was like, "Yeah, you might be right."
We had a full hour and half episode on Summer League, but we're gonna have to push that aside for some breaking news.
We are. But again, so I'm assuming at this point you already know. But Jrue Holiday, last night, the Boston Celtics and the Portland Trailblazers agreed to terms on a deal that sends Jrue Holiday to the Portland Trailblazers in exchange for guard Anthony Simons. Justin, now we've talked about a lot of trades on this podcast. This one is one that to me feels the most expected, while unexpected at the same time. Simons is not a name people mentioned in the trade market. The 26-year-old, the newly 26-year-old averaged 19.4 points per game last year for the Portland Trailblazers. Now, when you look at this aspect of this trade from a Celtics perspective, how does this benefit or maybe not benefit Boston?
I think in my opinion, and I've talked to people, there's no part in which this trade doesn't benefit Boston. Either way, this trade benefits Boston. It takes about I think the number was right around for this year specifically, takes about sheds only about $4 million off the salary. But overall, you save about a little over $70 million throughout the course of the next 4 years, I believe the number is. So Celtics save a lot of money doing this deal, and they also got younger. Now, here's the other thing. Anthony Simons, 26 years old. Offensive game is impeccable. Defensive game is where you're going to take a step back. Now, this defensive kind of role that we've seen Jrue Holiday play ultimately won us the finals, definitely kept us afloat in the Eastern Conference Finals against Indiana a couple of years ago with the famous steal for Boston to go up 3-0 in the conference finals. But you're going to take a little step back defensively, obviously. But Rob, what about this deal was not good for the Celtics? They got younger. They shed some salary cap. They got, I don't know how the Celtics were the ones to get two draft prospects back. Assets out of that. They got 2 second-round draft picks. And on top of that, you get an expiring contract. So say that Simons doesn't work. And if you do go with Simons for next season and it doesn't work, you don't have to re-sign him. You don't have to give him money. He's on an expiring deal. So to me, this was a this was usually here, low risk, high reward. This is no risk, very high reward for Boston, in my opinion, because if it works out with Simons, it works out, and you got a great young player in Simons. And if it doesn't work out, you can shed some more salary, and he's a movable contract.
I agree. I think the most appealing part of the deal is Simons' age. 26, freshly 26, right? I mean, to give up an asset of Jrue Holiday that's making that's due $70 million and he's 35 to get back an expiring 26-year-old that is extension eligible it is really huge. Again, I agree. A little of the ins and outs of the deal. Boston will be getting Anthony Simons, will be making $25.9 million. He'll be an unrestricted free agent in 2026. The Celtics get off the combined $72 million owed to Jrue Holiday in 2026-27 and 27-28. They're projected around $40 million in tax saving for the 25-26 season. They still remain about $18 million below the second apron. And again, as I mentioned, Simons is extension eligible. Shout out to Bobby Marks there on Twitter for that post. Again, Justin, everything we just mentioned from a financial aspect, like we talked about, is a positive. And that's not even getting into what Simons can bring potentially on the court. There is one worry, and I think Simons gives a lot of what Peyton Pritchard gives And I do think there is something to be looked at here. Is Simons going to be moved? Is Pritchard going to be moved? They're very similar players. I don't know what your thoughts are there in terms of fit, but I kind of think that right now it's like when you look at this, is there a potential of an unexpected move to be made, right? Like, is Simons going to get rerouted, or are we going to see a guy like Pritchard get rerouted somewhere? Or is Boston going to kind of roll out this Simons Pritchard kind of, hybrid guard scenario?
I'm sorry, Rob. I was listening. I just looked down at my phone. The Pelicans are trading CJ McCollum and Kelly Olynyk to the Washington Wizards. So, although this is a pre-recorded podcast, we're probably gonna be getting some live updates here.
Yeah, here we go.
But in terms of the fit of Simons, Rob, offensively, I really like his fit alongside Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown. Here's the huge downside to this, right? Simon, say he has a really, really good year and he's already making the money he's making right now. Is Boston willing to pay that going forward, moving in the coming years? Because we're more than likely not going to see Jason Tatum this year. And it's sounding like we're not going to see Kristaps Porzingis this year. So we're seeing a lot of these, what ifs with Magic Simons with this starting lineup. Well, the lineup that we have right now, Simons may not even get, even if he does stay for the year, he may not even get to play with Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown and Kristaps Porzingis. So, in terms of the fit, what we have right now on paper, I think offensively he fits into the game plan very well. He's a terrific 3-point shooter. He can run the offense. Portland really put their trust into Simons right around this. Remember, this was right around the time Damian Lillard left. So they really put their trust in Simons. So, I think he has the capability to fit really well with this team. But then again, Rob, I highlighted it earlier in the show. I'm going to highlight it again. His defense is a major issue. And that's something that I hope that this system, this developmental system, can help Simons in that department. Because again, you mentioned his age. He is still only 26. So, he can definitely trend on the upward side. He has his age to go for him. But offensively, there's no doubts that he could fit right in with this group, especially alongside a guard like Peyton Pritchard. They probably feed off each other very well. You can interchange that starting lineup in that bench. I mean, either one of those guys coming off the bench for you at that point guard spot is tremendous point guard depth within itself. But in terms of fit, it's kind of hard to say because Celtics are still expected to make a lot of roster moves. So this roster that we're seeing right now could even be different by the end of this podcast episode.
It could. And I think that this is a move that maybe is a year late, right? Because we're seeing the trajectory of the NBA right now. 7 champions. The Oklahoma City Thunder just capped off their 68-win season just the other night. 7 champions in 7 years. And again, you can't blame Boston for running it back. That core absolutely deserve to run it back. Absolutely. But you're kind of sitting here and you're thinking, okay, what did Boston need? They kind of needed this fresh new energy they needed to get younger. And I remember watching the series against New York, and quite frankly, Justin, the Celtics just looked dead in the mud. They looked exhausted. And between, the injuries and the age, and, you had Holiday, who was 35, and Horford was 37, 2 key players in your rotation who are above the age, above their kind of primes, you like to call it. And then on top of that, you had Porzingis, who was getting load managed all year. It felt like this team was missing a spark. Right, a young spark to go alongside what Brown and Tatum and White were doing in Pritchard. I think that's what this is. Simons offensively, I agree. He brings so much to the table. He was one of 15 players last year with 200 made threes and 175 free throws. Tatum, Edwards, Ant, Halliburton, Garland, and Curry are amongst those.
It's a good group.
It's a good group. So I agree with you from a defensive standpoint. If there's one thing that I believe Boston has succeeded, it's selling out on team defense. I mean, they have been such a successfully good defensive team with guys like Peyton Pritchard and, weaker defenders out there on the floor. So it'll be interesting to see, but,
Sorry. No, you're good. No, I just wanted to make a point though, because the Celtics, when you say the Celtics last year and the year before were able to kind of rely on team defense, I don't know if that's going to be the case this year, Rob. I mean, you think of it, you're losing Jrue Holiday, your best defender. You're missing out on Jason Tatum for the entire year, if not most of the year. Jaylen Brown, how's he going to be with his meniscus tear, his recovery? You really you can't make any guarantees with him. And also, what about Al Horford, Kristaps Porzingis, and Luke Cornett? 3 rim protectors, 3 guys who you really do lean on defensively when it comes to down low in the paint. You don't know whether Al's going to retire or Cornett's going to leave in free agency or Porzingis is even going to be on the roster. So the defense is going to be the biggest question for me, Rob, and that's something moving forward. I do need to see the Celtics kind of. I don't know what the moves need to be made, but it'd be nice to see the Celtics get some defense on the team because they got a lot of offense right now, but they're going to lose a lot of defensive power here in this offseason.
No, they are. I absolutely agree with you because, especially, and this is the most interesting aspect, in my opinion, to this trade is that Simons is 6'3", right? Pritchard's 6'2". Those are 2 players you can't really have on the floor at the same time together. And if you do, you're going to have a real defensive problem. So it makes me think something bigger is in the works. And this was step 1 of Brad Stevens' plan. Because quite frankly, it wouldn't make sense from a roster construction to have Simons as the starting guard and then but again, you could do it, right? You could have Pritchard come off the bench.
Well, you also have to look at this and go, well, maybe right now it doesn't look like the perfect fit, at least on paper, for the Celtics. What if you go out and you get a guy like Lonzo Ball, a bigger guard for the Celtics? That'll fix their problems. I mean, I don't know what they're going to do with JD, but JD, and that even if he's a 3rd guard in the rotation, he's a smaller guard to go along with Pritchard and Simon. So I'd also keep your eyes open on maybe a potential guy like Lonzo Ball, a bigger guard who can really facilitate. And Lonzo's been linked to the Celtics for the past couple of years. I understand that his health has been an issue, but that's something I would definitely keep my eye on is Lonzo Ball. And if the Celtics are interested in that department, because you look at Chicago, and I mean, 3-4 years ago, they were the 1 seed, and then they imploded, and then, they dished a lot of guys out, and they're in this weird rebuilding phase that I don't even think they're quite sure what they're in. So I don't know, Rob. I'm just saying, keep your eyes open for that, because I don't know this Simons deal. I wouldn't mind if he stayed around, but it feels a little bit weird to me. It feels like this is one of those, all right, we'll get him for a few days and we'll find a deal for him.
It does, because again, if Peyton Pritchard was not rostered on this team, I would not have that thought. But if there is one thing that I can take from this is that I think they took the best offer. I don't think any team was offering anything close to a 26-year-old that's a 20-point per game scorer, right? That from a talent standpoint. I think Brad's thought process here is let's take on this talent, right? We're cutting salary by a small margin, but we're still cutting, right? He's on an expiring deal. Worst case, we keep him and let him ball out for a year in which that has no expectations, right? Best case, you package him alongside of Kristaps Porzingis, right? In a trade, you cut more salary and the return for KP's bigger. I think that's Brad's vision here. And that brings me to Porzingis, because I do want to talk about KP, because now we have some news that Kristaps Porzingis talks are intensifying between the Boston Celtics and the San Antonio Spurs within the last 24 hours. Boston is looking to purge salaries. There have been no details on what San Antonio is offering. However, there is thought that Harrison Barnes would have to be in a return from KP. But I will preface this, Justin. If there's one thing Brad Stevens does, is Brad Stevens moves in silence. So whatever that first initial report is usually not what's going on.
Well, that's what was so you talked about. This was so, caught off guard, the Anthony Simons thing. He hasn't even been on the Celtics radar publicly ever. Like, I've never heard a Simons to Boston trade rumor out there, at least definitely not within these past recent weeks. The biggest rumor that we heard was Jrue Holiday's going to Dallas for Gafford and Washington and draft capital. I mean, and that didn't happen. So Brad Stevens knows what he's doing. He hasn't, in my opinion, made a single bad move since he's
No.
been in office. I mean, he hasn't. He's been the perfect president in terms of basketball operations. He's done everything and more for this basketball team, and I trust him to make the right move, and I trust that he won't make the move unless he thinks it's right for the team. So that could also be why, maybe Porzingis sticks around and we don't get rid of him till the trade deadline, or maybe he sticks around for this season and we wait till his contract expires. Whatever the case may be, if the deal's not out there and it's not going to help, it's not going to benefit the Celtics. Really don't think Brad Stevens would do that. I don't think he'd make a deal just to make a deal. I think I think he genuinely have to like the deal. And even going to this trade, like you said, you really thought the Celtics were going to get a 26-year-old, 20-point per game scorer and 2 second-round picks, might I add. And everybody says, oh, second-round picks, big deal. In today's NBA, those second-round picks are golden. Everybody loves those second-round picks. I mean,
Right.
we see it all over the place with these deals. So I trust it. I just don't know where we're at where Kristaps Porzingis, because I told you this morning, one day it feels like the Celtics are ready to shop him. The next day it feels like he's going to stick around. So I really don't know the gauge on that.
I think you're so right. And quite frankly, I apologize. I'm looking over here, but it's just because I have Twitter pulled up because there's indications. Okay. Is it
Jordan Poole, the Wizards trade?
No, well, I'm looking at, I mean, there is some serious Kristaps Porzingis movement here. The Lakers, Warriors, Spurs, and Pelicans are all amongst teams that have called Boston in regards to Kristaps Porzingis. Lakers, Spurs, and Warriors amongst heavily pursuers. So again, it's like you read this and there's one hand, it's okay, sure, yes, what could those teams give? Another hand, Brad's probably on the phone with, Charlotte working out a deal. So you don't know. For me, Kristaps, I expect him. So today's Tuesday, June 24th. I think Kristaps gets moved before tomorrow at the draft. I think Brad is trying. If I know Brad Stevens, he's at least going to try to get one first-round pick out of Hauser, Porzingis, and Holiday. At least one. And I do believe it will come through. I believe a team will cough up a first for Porzingis. I do believe that's a path that we could see.
I think you also have to look at what teams like the Lakers and the Warriors, two teams who are desperate to get a center in their city to play for them. The Warriors, especially looking for a center that's height is more than 6'9". All right. They've been looking for a center for quite some time. They've had to throw Draymond Green in there as center, and they're kind of in and out on the whole Kevon Looney situation. And I think Kristaps Porzingis is somebody that they're looking for, veteran, championship experience, can shoot the ball, and he can play down low, protect the rim, something that Golden State really hasn't had in quite some time. So I do think those two teams specifically are teams looking for a guy like Kristaps Porzingis. But again, Kristaps' health is a major problem. I'm a little bit worried. I'm a little bit worried that some teams will be a little bit hesitant to make their offers for Kristaps Porzingis until they see him play in the summer. I believe he's playing for his country this summer, so be a little bit interested to see kind of how he looks there. But this Kristaps Porzingis, it's starting to heat up. But like I said, it's kind of like on and off. One day you hear a lot of things, the next day not so much.
I also do think there is a path in which Boston holds Porzingis and dumps him at the deadline. If there's not an offer out there that I think in which Brad, because again, the reports is that the Celtics front office and organization is looking to retool, right? And I think the Simons trade is a perfect example of them retooling. They're getting younger while giving themselves flexibility next offseason, right? That is kind of the process of retooling. I don't think we're going to see this massive Jaylen Brown deal, right? A franchise-altering Derek White move, like none of those two. I don't think, when you're retooling, you're not moving 1 through 3, right, on your roster. You're probably moving 4 through 7. And that's kind of where the retool begins. And, again, we've already seen this. Number 5, Jrue Holiday. He's the first gadget off the squad. So as much as these Porzingis rumors are heating up, Justin, I'll be interested to see if the market is there for him, and what Brad's approach is. Is it okay? Let's just keep him, right? Worst case scenario, we dump him at the deadline, or is there a deal out there? Are the Spurs willing to give up Harrison Barnes in a first-round pick, right? Like, is that offer out there? We don't know, but it'll be interesting to see.
I also don't know, and this is, you talk about free agency because now the finals are over. The Celtics are eligible to negotiate with their own free agents. So that would be Horford, that would be Torrey Craig, that would be Luke Cornett, and I believe that would be restricted free agent Drew Peterson as well. I'd be really interested because 2 out of those 4 free agents are centers. I'd be interested to see if if the Celtics free agent signing and what they offer them is kind of up to what they do with Kristaps Porzingis. Because if they keep Porzingis, I'm not so sure that they can afford Luke Cornett. I really do think Luke Cornett has passed a minimum contract deal with what he's shown this season and with what he's shown in the playoffs, specifically in that New York series. I just don't know if the Celtics could afford to keep him around. Obviously, you'd love to keep him around, but money's a thing now. And with the second apron, Celtics are very, very, very limited towards their moves, especially if they keep Kristaps Porzingis. So, in terms of movement of those guys, I think it's going to be up to Kristaps Porzingis and what they do with him. So, I don't know, Robin. I don't know what to do with the whole center situation because everything's up in the air. Horford's up in the air on retiring. Cornette's up in the air in free agency. Can we even afford to bring him back? He'd probably love to come back if he could. Kristaps Porzingis and all these trade rumors. Xavier Tillman's been non-existent. Neemias Queta has shown glimpses, but still the game just hasn't seemed to slow down for him. So I'm a little bit at that center position. Everybody's worried about the wing. I get it. Jason Tatum's out, but I'm looking at guys like Baylor Shireman this year to step up. Jordan Walsh needs to step up. Really looking at that center. You're seeing a gaping hole at that center position right now if you're Boston. And, we'll get to it later on with a few of our guys that the Celtics are eligible to get in the draft. But, that's kind of my gaping hole right now is that center spot.
It is. And, for me, if you look at so you figure you move off Porzingis, you're clearing 30, right? That brings you into the first apron. It takes you out of the second apron.
Yep.
Plus a Hauser move, then maybe you have some roster flexibility. But I do also think that there is this world in which Boston needs to kind of maybe look into where when you're paying your 2 best players $65 and $60 million, it might get really dicey to construct a roster that is that you can compete with without paying the luxury tax, right? And I think that's the tough part Boston's at. Listen, you got Brown and Tatum making all this money. You want to compete at the high level. You're probably going to have to do one of 2 things. One, draft really, really well and take advantage of those first 4 years you have those cheap rookies. Or 2, bite the bullet and you're going to have to pay the luxury tax. And, the unfortunate the part of the second apron is it's so restrictive on what a team can do. So you're right. You're in a tough spot, and it shows at that center position because you move off Porzingis, you still find yourself in that first apron. You bring back Cornette, that's going to bleed you a little bit more into that first apron. Now you bring back Horford on a minimum deal. Is Horford and Cornette really a strong enough, starting 1-2 punch? Do you put your eggs in the Neemias Queta basket? Do you build through the draft? I mean, I do believe the center position is a product of the Celtics' financial instability right now. It is.
Right. And you don't really hear too many centers on the Celtics market. You heard Danielle Gafford just signed a deal with an extension with the Dallas Mavericks. And, you and I were kind of sitting there thinking like, ooh, that sets it up for a really beautiful sign and trade if they want to pursue Jrue Holiday, like all these reports are saying. But clearly that was not the case. Or at least not the case that Brad Stevens went with, if that was even presented to him. But I'm interested to see what these next moves are for the Celtics in terms of not necessarily who the players are, but what position they are. Because, again, that big man role is just really, really important in today's game, whether they can space the floor or not. And you look at Golden State right now, they're struggling to find a center, and in the Lakers, and you don't want to find yourself in a situation like that. Celtics have much more roster talent than the Lakers do, but in terms of their center position in their front court, they are significantly underwater right now. So I'm interested, but we said it earlier, we're not going to find guys like over Twitter, right? Usually those are the very opposite of what we find.
Yeah, absolutely. And for me, the draft is where this starts, right? This is where you need to approach and make a move on draft night in some asset. I mean, because you have the tool, and for me, Justin, I've been on record here saying that Boston needs to move up. You have 28 and 32 this year alongside a guy like a Hauser or even a Porzingis,
Yeah.
right? You have the tools to be able to move up. Now, there has been a rumor in which Boston is a team looking to move up. That doesn't shock me. That does not surprise me. But you look at some of these names here, right? That the NBA draft has. This is not last year's NBA draft, Justin. This is a very, very deep and talented draft with, guys that could absolutely make a difference on a roster next year. And that's my biggest thing with this Celtics team, Justin, is, I'm a fan of Shireman. Walsh, I'm starting to lose hope with, but you can't afford to do this G League prospect thing right now with the way the current
Well,
framework of the roster looks. You're going to need a guy that's going to be able to step into your lineup and make contributions off the bat, who's young, who has room to grow, has room to improve, but can play NBA level basketball, starting in October when the NBA season starts. And, for me, Justin, it starts by trading up. It does.
mm, mm. I'm the draft is something that the draft has to be every year. It seems like the same story. The Celtics are looking to move up in the draft. The Celtics are looking to, to move around. They're not going to use their picks. They are going to use their picks. I have no comments towards any rumors about the draft until we're on the clock, until
Right.
it's actually happening, because there's been too many times where rumors swirl and nothing happens. Or remember a couple summers ago where Brad just kept trading the pick and trading the pick and trading the pick and trading
Yeah.
the pick. I mean, we made about a gazillion trades and we still picked the guy that we wanted to pick at the same spot. So, the trade's a little different here. I'm sure the Celtics will figure it out. They have everything. They have everything right now. They have Hauser. They have Porzingis. They have 2 picks, one in the first round, one early in the second round. I believe 32's in the second round. So, I got to see what happens here. I got to see what happens.
Yeah.
I have a couple of guys. I have a couple of guys in mind. I'm not too sure where they'll fall, if they'll be picked, if they won't be picked, but I have a couple of guys in mind for the
Right.
Celtics. And after that, I'm just rooting for whoever comes to Boston. But I agree with you. Like, time might be ticking on the whole Jordan Walsh thing. I understand that he's only 20, but
Right.
here's the thing about Jordan Walsh, and I love him. But here's the thing about Jordan Walsh. He spent so much time in Maine his rookie year, which is fantastic. And he didn't spend much time in Maine his second year, but he also didn't get much playing time. So when he did get the
Right.
playing time in Boston, his shot looked different. His shot even looked different from the preseason. In the preseason, he was stroking it, and it was looking great. And it was just regular season game, and it's like something hit him. Something hit him in the face. He got nervous. So we saw a little bit regression in Jordan Walsh's game. I don't know if this is okay, we can thrust Jordan Walsh into the rotation until Tatum gets back. I don't think I'm
Right.
okay with that.
Well, so and again, this is all predicated around what moves get made around Hauser and Porzingis, right? Because you figure if you move Porzingis for a forward, right, you have a little bit more flexibility to attack center in the draft, and somebody
Yep.
with the likes of like a Derek Queen, right, or one of
Mhm.
these bigger guards. Asa Newell is a smaller center, but he's very Robert Williams esque in
Like
my
the guy from Creighton.
head out of Georgia. Exactly. Cockbrenner is another name that, like you said, from Creighton. That is you could attack, or if you move Porzingis for another big man, right? Then you're gonna need to attack the draft, be very wing heavy. So it really does start. I mean, it's funny because we were saying that Jrue's the first domino to fall, and while that's true, you replaced a guard with a guard, right? So now it's like, okay, it's kind of like the first trade that's going to have real draft effects is going to be the trade where you're trading a forward for a center or a center for a forward.
Yeah.
Might not happen. It could happen. We'll see. But again, it is draft night to me is you need some versatility on the Celtics roster, Justin, in which they don't have right now. I still don't know if they got that with Simons. I think he's offensively very versatile, right? But he's defensively, he can't do much with them. You need more of these guys in the draft is where you can do it that are 6'7", very switchable and athletic. You thought you had that in Walsh. You probably don't. It's not fully closed, but you probably don't. You got to go somewhere else. And I think that's the direction on draft night.
I want somebody who could come in and show me something in Vegas, right? I don't want it to be seriously, Rob.
Right there. No,
seriously, Rob, because you know what? And I'm going to be honest with you. Shireman and Watson didn't show me too much in Vegas last year. They really didn't look all that spectacular in Vegas last year. Maybe we were more focused on guys like Jaden Springer, Neemias Queta, and Jordan Walsh, guys who were actually getting minutes in the rotation the year before. But I didn't get that much from Baylor Shireman in Vegas last year. I need to see somebody who can make an impact right away. And I understand that, Justin, you might be asking a lot. You're talking about a second-round pick here, late first-round pick. We've seen a lot of late first-round picks, second-round picks do pretty well for themselves to start off in the NBA. And I think this draft, as loaded as it is, has the capability of this draft class being very deep and being able to show that a lot of guys are NBA ready.
I haven't seen it yet from Brad in the draft. I haven't seen him. There's one thing Danny Ainge could do. Danny could draft. What he did, right? Danny thought to himself, I don't need to move up. I'm going to move back because I know who the right pick is, right? We've seen it with Jason Tatum. He moved back to get Tatum, right? He moved back to get Peyton Pritchard. That's who Danny Ainge was. Brad Stevens, as great as a trader as this guy is, right, and working that market, I'm not sold that Brad Stevens has the ability to get value at 28 and 32 because you ask me, Walsh was a miss. And currently speaking, Shireman, I have faith in him, but he's a question mark, right? So if for me right now, I would have to advise Brad to trade up and get best talent available because I don't know if you can hit at 28 or 32 or do the whole Danny Ainge trade back thing. I don't think that's in his playbook.
Who did we get when we traded back? Was that the Shireman pick or Watson?
That was the pick. When we just kept going back and back.
We just kept going back for like an hour. It was just terrible.
I believe that was
it was late. That's something that I can't stand about the draft. Personal opinion is sometimes it just takes so long for the draft to go on. So when Brad was doing that, it was ticking me off. Oh my gosh!
Well, they switched to the whole 2-day format now, so they're doing that. So
that's right. It's going to be Wednesday and Thursday now.
Exactly right. So we'll have to see. It's going to be really interesting. It's going to be really, really interesting from a Celtics perspective. And again, we're on here this week talking, one way, and who knows? We might have to bust out an emergency podcast. You just never know with the current.
We might have to scrap this entire episode before it drops.
Yeah, we might.
That's how we're uncertain about
something. I got my fingers crossed that the Porzingis news breaks now and not in an hour after we're done. After we press end record. But again, so that is kind of the Celtics front. There is some stuff we can talk about around the association. Justin, I mean, that the Celtics aren't the only team in this league. I do want to talk about the finals with you. Obviously, Thunder. They beat the Pacers in a game 7. Tyrese Halliburton, that happens. I want your kind of opinion on two things. First, I'm going to ask you is your overall thoughts on the playoffs. Is the playoffs? Are they too long? Did you enjoy watching it? Where are you at with that?
I don't know. I don't know the whole thing on it's too long because the playoffs haven't changed in quite some time, right?
Yeah, since the 90s.
I think this year the only reason why we're questioning it is because of the unfortunate events of Tatum tearing his Achilles and Damian Lillard and his injury, and he was also injured before, and Tyrese Halliburton coming back, and he was also injured before, and he was warned that, listen, this could be bad if you get injured from this injury, and he was warned that before the game. And same thing with Kevin Durant a few years back when he was dealing with his, I believe it was a calf strain, and he injured his Achilles. So I think the playoffs are fine. I don't think I think they're fine. Okay. I don't think there needs to be any changes. I'm okay with it. I'm not okay with the Celtics going on in May this year. I think usually we're so used to them going at least late May,
Right.
early June,
Late May,
like,
June.
and so I don't know. I think the timing of it is okay. It feels a little bit stretched out. I feel as if we had a lot of game sevens this year in this year's playoffs, which is pretty good. Something I don't like, I will say about the playoffs, which probably will, lessen it, from instead of like 2.5 months, at least down to 2 months, at least maybe down to a month and 3/4, is there doesn't need to be like 3 days in between games. Like
Right.
game one's on, like, this is just an example. Game one's on the 15th and game two is on like the 18th or 19th. That's just like, that doesn't need
It
to
does not
happen.
need to
That,
happen.
that
Right.
doesn't need to happen, especially if it's, especially if it's not in the finals. I can understand like a maybe 2-day break if it's like Boston and Los Angeles. You're going across country. That's a little bit different. I can understand that. But no, man, I think that there was just a lot of game sevens this year. I think that this season went as long as it possibly could have gone. And anytime there's injuries, that question's going to be brought up. Well,
No doubt.
you see
No
it in the
doubt.
regular season, Rob? You
You
see
do.
it in the regular
You do.
season. Oh, well, you think instead of like 82 games, they should play like 72? And it's like,
That's ridiculous. And I hate that. You know why? Because one, there's two aspects why I hate this. One, because all the records need to be rewritten. And I am an advocate of whatever the classic games played, right? Once like in baseball, you don't change how many games, but you just don't change it, right? Um, Two, my problem with that is because less games does not equal better product, right? The basketball is so rich in that aspect.
I feel like I also feel like maybe I'm just an airhead, but I feel like, especially non-contact injuries, I get it. Your body gets wear and tear throughout playing time and, deeper into the season. I get that. Your bodies and your muscles, your joints, all that. But a lot of non-contact injuries is based on movement. I can get up from my chair right now, Rob, and get up wrong and tear my Achilles. Like I could, like my
I
heel
hope
goes
I
up,
hope
and
not. I
I'm
hope
just
not.
saying, like, it's just inevitable. Like, it could just
Right.
happen. And what do you want me to say? Like, what do you want me to say there? Like, we should lower the podcast length, the length of the podcast, because I was sitting in my chair too long and I got up and my foot was hurt. You know what I mean? Like,
No, I
I don't know
agree.
what to say
Well,
to
you know what
that.
it is? You know what it is? It's a lot of if you go back, and again, this is the argument here is that these injuries are relatively new, right? There's a lot of injuries. And I 100% agree with you. Movement. Like it is like you go back and you watch a 90s basketball game or even mid 2000s, their movements are simple. It's not as explosive, right? A lot less of this, especially with this burst off the back leg that we are
Yeah.
seeing
Yeah.
players do. There
You didn't
needs to
see
be
that.
some. No, you didn't. And
Yeah.
I think there needs to be a little bit of modern medicine look into okay, when you're the fundamentals of when you're growing up in basketball, that explosion off that back leg, we don't teach that because it's dangerous. And like
Mm.
simple stuff like that. I agree, right? Less games, it does not mean anything. Right? That's not going to change anything because look, you're going to go from LeBron sitting out, 80 or 22 games. He's still going to sit out those 22. He's going to go from playing 60 to 40. It's just going to make for a worse product.
Right.
And from an injury front, we've always played 82 games. What do you mean? We got if anything, the
Other than like a
equipment's better
lockout.
than it what
Right.
exactly.
Right.
Exactly. So I think it's ridiculous.
And it's also, whatever. It could be a physical play. I can run up and go for a block shot, and instead I elbow your forehead. And so now what's the argument there?
Exactly. We have this Kevin Durant drama. Or not even drama. I would call it just a trade.
A
Durant
tradition.
gets
A
tradition. Yeah, it's every other year. It's almost like the World Cup. Comes around like every 3 to 4 years. You see Kevin Durant get more the Olympics.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. So Durant, him and his era in Phoenix is over. It is done. He has been traded to the Houston Rockets in exchange for Jalen Green. Is the major piece in this deal. What do you think? I mean, like, I have an unpopular opinion here. but I'm looking at what Houston's doing, and
Yeah.
I'm thinking, what are you doing?
Yeah, I'm not the biggest fan of it. I think I don't know, Rob. I don't know. I'm scratching my head with you, though. I am on that side. I
Right.
am a little bit on the head scratcher. Obviously, Hall of Famer, one of the greatest to ever do it, Kevin Durant, still a prolific athlete, prolific scorer in today's NBA. But just seeing how his current situations ended up with the teams that he's had in these recent years, being so in Brooklyn, being so in Phoenix, the amount of talent that he's had around him. And it's been nothing but drama around. I'm not saying it's necessarily his fault, but I'm just saying Durant's had his go-arounds in the NBA, and he's had a lot of great teams. And he hasn't been able to do much other than those Golden State years. So I don't know. And you're giving up Dylan Brooks, somebody who you brought in last year. And really, I don't know, and maybe not skill-wise, but in terms of camaraderie and just how he goes about his game, definitely one of the main reasons why he's in Houston. He was brought to Houston.
And do what this reminds me of is the Celtics in 2022 offseason. There was all this drama. Do you trade Jaylen Brown for Kevin Durant? Right. At the time, Brown was 24. Durant was 33. And the Celtics stood pat and they said, we're not giving up a young piece for an old asset. Right. We're just not doing that. Jalen Green, there's a couple aspects. He is 22 years old. The dude was just he's our age. He was legally been able to buy a beer a year ago, and he's getting traded for Kevin Durant, who is 36. The Rockets are not a Kevin Durant away from winning an NBA championship. Right. And to give up a 22-year-old with promise is bonkers. And I just want to make this comparison real quick because I see a lot of Jaylen Brown in Jalen Green, right? Jalen Green in his first 4 seasons has averaged 17.3 points per game, 22.1, 19.6, 21.0, right? Not a lot of improvement, one could say, right? Again, his game he has not missed a regular season game in 2 years. That is worth noting. Jaylen Brown, his first 4 year, he averaged 6.6 his first year, 14.5, 13, then 20, right? It took him to year 5 to make his first All-Star game and to finally crack 20 points per game. You wait. You stay patient with these guys. You give them time. I mean, Jalen Green had a really rough playoff, and they dumped him for Kevin Durant.
Right away. They finally made the playoffs and dumped him right away.
And in my eyes, Justin, that is the epitome of what keep garbage franchises garbage. You don't wait. You don't give your young players an opportunity to go through those hardships. Young players in the NBA are supposed to fail. They're supposed to have those series against the Golden State Warriors in the first round where they stink it up. They're young. You need that to be a superstar. And the Rockets are essentially saying, you know what? You had one of those, Jalen Green. We're gonna dump you for a guy that won't even be in the league in 3 years.
Which I don't understand why they would do that as well. I mean, okay, so say you get Kevin Durant in a not so wide open Western Conference. It's not as open as the Eastern Conference, not even close. Okay, so you get Kevin Durant and you dish out Green and Brooks and pretty sure draft capital too. And you get Kevin Durant, who's now what, 37, 38 years old? How much more of Kevin Durant are you going to get? How much more are you going to get? Maybe if that. And are you going to do anything with it? And that's where I'm at. What are you going to do with KD? Because if it doesn't work this year, boy, Rob, did they mess up big time in my opinion?
Yeah. Meanwhile, Jalen Green is 23, like 23 years old, and it's funny too. Look at Durant's track record. Like, come on, people, what are we doing?
I mean, how do you think Tatum and Brown, as the leaders, got to where they are now? Because they failed many times.
So many times.
They failed.
You look at any great, and again, this is like, look at Phoenix with Booker. Phoenix has given Booker a lot of time, and it hasn't worked out for Phoenix. That's a case where maybe you give somebody too much time, right? You need to reroute, but you got to give these young guys time. And is look at New Orleans. They have tried and tried and tried with Zion, right? It's set them back a little bit, but you need to give them time. And
Right.
Jalen Green's a player in my eyes that is very talented. He has all the intangibles to be a great young star. And to move off of him for a player with the track record, if it really since he's left Golden State, right, a track record of being an inch away from making the Eastern Conference Finals, and that's it. That's who Kevin Durant has been since he's left the Golden State Warriors. To move him for Jalen Green, who's young, in my eyes, it's just really stupid and really dumb.
It also makes me wonder. So, what was last year? Last year meant absolutely nothing for the Houston Rockets. Right. They brought in Van Vliet, they brought in Ime Udoka, they brought in Dylan Brooks and Green and Şengün having a great year. They brought in a couple vets like Jeff Green. For what? You finally made the playoffs.
They built culture.
They were a sub-20 team at one point a couple years back. And for what? Right? They just immediately they finished the 2 seed in the West, and they go down 3-1 against Golden State, and they almost make a comeback. And then they say, you know what? To the 2 people that helped them the most, maybe outside of Şengün and Thompson, they said bye-bye. That to me doesn't make sense. Something had to be wrong there. And I don't care if it's Kevin Durant. I feel like, in my opinion, you just don't do that. You just don't make that move.
Brooks was a culture guy too. I think that's important. Mind you, talent-wise, he's not a Kevin Durant. I can't argue that.
What's the point of building this whole
this H-Town young culture, and you move off of 2 vital pieces for that? It's funny, though, because on the flip side, from a Phoenix perspective, as much as I'm hyping up who Jalen Green could be, it's funny because you look at him going to Phoenix, and you're like, okay, what? Like right now they have Booker, Beal, and Jalen Green. It's like, what the hell? So I think Phoenix is funny because I don't know if you're going to be able to get off this Bradley Beal deal. And
no trade you got to move crazy.
Yes. Oh my, I don't know who allowed Bradley Beal to have a no trade clause, but you should be fired.
They're deeper in the hole than the Celtics, by the way. They're much significantly deeper in the hole with the Celtics. And I think it's Boston. I think it's Celtics, Minnesota, and Phoenix who are over the apron. The Celtics are like 180, I think. And this is just based off my head. And I think it's like 210.
Well, I can tell you where Boston's at right now. I want to say Boston's actually at 220. Maybe they were 227 pre Jrue Holiday trade. They are now 225 or 222.
Phoenix was 222?
No, Boston. I'm just looking at. I made this post.
Phoenix was much worse than that then.
Right.
Phoenix, maybe I just got the numbers wrong, but Phoenix was much worse than the Celtics. So Phoenix has a lot of work to do in terms of not only constructing their roster, but constructing their finances. They are screwed. They gave everything to Beal, Booker, and Durant. They were sold on that idea. Just those 3 alone, they were sold on. They gave up. They gave up on the team that made it to the finals so quickly. And Kevin Durant was with that. They gave up on them so quick. They dished everybody out, and now they're paying for it, literally.
If I'm Phoenix, I think it's time you move off Booker. I think Booker can get you a great haul. I think Booker can get if you look at the Bane market, he's definitely better than Desmond Bane. That's no question. I think you can move Booker for some real packages. Whatever you need to do with Beal to just get him off the roster, I think you do. Because I hate to say it, Bradley Beal is a negative. I don't know if that's releasing him. I don't know if that's stretching out the contract reconstruction and paying him over X amount of years. I don't know what that is. I don't know if it's literally trading him to a team that is willing to give up, like you give them first round. I don't know what it is, but you got to get Beal off your books. And then I think you got a future because you get these assets from Booker. You have a year of probably being bad, but it's the Jalen Green show. And you have this 22-year-old, just uber athletic player that maybe starts turning into who is now being raised as a number 1. And I think that's where Jalen Green's problem has been. Jalen Green was never really properly raised to the number 1 role because it was this weird dynamic where they had drafted Jalen Green and then they had drafted Sengun, right? And then like they had this, and so you had Green and Sengun there, and it was who's the one, and then they bring in Fred VanVleet. And then it's like, okay, well, is VanVleet supposed to be like our one? And then you draft Amin Thompson, and now it's like, okay, now Amin Thompson's our future guy. So I think from Green, he's kind of sitting there being like, well, hold on, right?
I'm still here.
I'm pick 2. I'm still here, right? Like I can do this thing. And I think he's been thrown off to the side a little bit. So if Phoenix can raise, and I say raise, it's because NBA draftees are a lot like babies. You got to raise them properly, right? To get them to grow into what they need to be. If Houston can do that right, then I mean they hit the money on this trade. You got a 22-year-old that maybe could be a star. Worst case, he's not a star, and you move off of Kevin Durant for basically nothing. Like Durant wasn't going to get you anything.
I think the mess Durant wanted out. Now this whole Bradley Beal situation, I don't know how Booker feels, because Booker seems like a guy who wants to stay there his entire career. Respect to him, but Booker's got to get the hell out of there, man.
He's a better man than me. I would have been out of there 4 years ago.
I mean, the best thing Phoenix has going for them is they're bringing back their Valley jerseys next year, because dude, they are so toast, and I don't even know if they have a draft pick this year.
I'm not in the first round, I believe. I don't think so.
They're toast, and I'm pretty sure no trade clauses. Like if they trade Beal can say no.
Oh, Phoenix says pick 10 via Houston.
Oh, they do. Oh, that's right. They were in the lottery. I'm an idiot. There's a team. Right. I'm trying to think. There was a team who's doesn't have a pick this year, but I still think Phoenix is a mess, even with that 10th pick. By the way.
Oh yeah, pick 10 is not changing the direction of the Phoenix Suns.
They picked Dragan Bender. I'm pretty sure that there's nothing stopping them from picking somebody.
Exactly.
But yeah, Phoenix is a mess. They're like, there's nothing that phases me about that Phoenix team. Their coaching is a mess too. Who do they have over there? Is it Vogel or Budenholzer? Yeah, it's just a mess.
Budenholzer, I couldn't even tell you. I don't even.
It's a mess. You couldn't tell me, because it's a mess. They've been through so many coaches every year. I'm pretty sure they don't even have a coach.
Budenholzer's on Phoenix. They had fired Vogel, I believe, and hired Budenholzer this year.
See, they can't even get their coaches right. They're a wreck. But I'm excited to see what Houston looks like. More so than Houston, or more so than Phoenix, because Phoenix, I still think that they're a mess. They're atrocious. The last thing they needed was a shooting guard. They went out and they got a shooting guard.
Yeah.
But in terms of, I mean, it's always fun. We're sitting here talking about how Durant is, almost 40, but let's face it, he's still one of the better players in the league. He's still balling. And, I'm excited to see Durant with this 12th team in the third year. So that'll be really interesting. It's another colored jersey for him to go on the rainbow and go on the rainbow graphic, and whatever, life goes on. But there's a trade that happened just while we were on here that I don't understand. CJ McCollum swap for Jordan Poole.
Right. This is a typical, what this is to me. This is the new NBA. This is the new era of the NBA, where the caps, the aprons are so brutal that you're going to see these random trades. I mean, who would have thought Jordan Poole would have gotten traded for CJ McCollum 2 years ago, right? From New Orleans. It's just like, that's the era of the NBA that this second apron has created. It is just, quite frankly, just a mess within the market.
Yeah. I don't see the point of the trade. Other than obviously you talk about financial reasons. See, Kelly Olynyk is in that trade. So, going back to when the Celtics played the Wizards, back when Kelly Olynyk was on the team, on the Celtics, that was like a big rivalry, and the whole Kelly Oubre versus Kelly Olynyk thing, that series was a big thing. So it'll be interesting to see Kelly Olynyk in a Washington uniform, even though it's been years. But you're going to, like you said, you're going to see a lot of weird moves this year. With some different teams. It sounds like New Orleans, this is not the only move they're going to make as well. They're very much so on the market. Kristaps Porzingis being one of the guys they're trying to have conversations about, as Rob mentioned earlier on in the show. So, maybe New Orleans is a team that we kind of have to keep an eye on ourselves. But, like I said, this is going to be such a weird offseason, not only for the Celtics, but around the association and the Celtics roster. It's hard to assess what they look like right now. It's really hard to assess the Anthony Simons trade because there's tremendous upside to it, and then it has its cons as well. But you really can't put it together because how can you say, oh, he's going to play well against this guy or he's going to play well with this guy? Well, this guy very might so be out the door by the end of the sentence. So I really can't,
Right.
make
Exactly.
the assessment. We're in July, we're in June still. So, these
Exactly.
early trades, it's tough.
It is tough, and it's going to be a big week, and we'll see how the team looks next week on next
Mm.
week's pod. Because again, we're coming in here right now talking about all this stuff, and we might have to literally scrap it, and because you don't know.
We might not even have Anthony Simons by our next podcast episode for all we know.
Yeah,
We just
yeah, we
spent
might have
we
sat
just
here.
spent an hour talking about
Yeah,
Anthony Simons, and we might not even have him. So
yeah, no. So we'll see. We'll see how it goes. With draft night's going to be huge. Again, I've had Twitter up this whole time checking it. Nothing new on Porzingis outside of what we've already reported. Again, but by the time this is out tomorrow by noon, Porzingis could be absolutely off the roster, and we're already recording another one. So again, I don't know. We'll see how it goes. But guys, I just want to thank you. This is now the third episode back on the Celtics Talk Weekly podcast. This is the first podcast that we've had just me and Justin, a little OG throwback kind of vibe in a while. So we really hope you guys are enjoying that the podcast is back, because we have really enjoyed starting it back up. I just want to say it is here for good this time. We are going to be putting out an episode in some sense, some asset every single week, whether it is 20 minutes or an hour, 20 minutes. We are going to get you guys at least a weekly podcast with new guests, with new people, with new faces, and it's going to be a lot of fun. So we appreciate the love and support that you guys have been showing. And we're excited to get back at it. I don't know about you, Justin, but
yeah, I mean, it's going to be a fun off season. Obviously, it's the most wonderful time of the year. I'll be playing my Christmas album pretty soon. That summer league is right around the corner. It's Christmas in July for me. But no, I mean, the draft is here. Free agency's coming up. Summer league's coming up, and the Celtics have a hell of a lot of moves to make. So it's going to be one hell of an offseason. We're going to be busy. We're going to have a lot to talk about this offseason.
And it's funny because it's a trade-off. Last year, the Celtics win the finals, but the offseason was dry, even from like a views perspective, right? And if you really want to get into the behind the scenes of, guys that have podcasts and run social media pages and all this stuff, they watch views, they look at interactions, they look at, we watch that stuff. And last summer, you talk about a drought. There was just nothing was happening on Boston, right? I mean, we knew everyone was getting re-signed. There was no trades, no rumors. After the day of the parade, there was nothing to talk about. There was nothing to post, and our numbers tanked. Well, yeah, you look at last night. I mean, numbers are going to be through the roof this summer.
Yeah, I mean, we appreciate the support, whether it's one viewer or whether it's 1,000 viewers. We appreciate it, and we've come so far as a brand and as a podcast, just with Rob and I in this program. So I think Rob and I specifically want to thank you. Obviously, everybody, Seamus and Franco and all the rest of them do tremendous jobs on the post-game shows, and Seamus has been killing it with the live shows recently. But specifically from Rob and I, who've kind of we're on this originality of the podcast. We thank you guys, and we appreciate you guys for sticking with us.
We do. And guys, you know the drill. Until next time, until next week, go Celtics.